Hi everybody, thank you very much for having me along today. My name's Hannah and I'm the Head of Learning and Evaluation at Gingerbread. The presentation that I'm going to provide today is probably in direct contrast to the kind of previous presentation, which both shares some of the kind of highlights and some of the challenges and provides some data on our employment programme. I've been in post for 12 months and my kind of brief when I came in to work with the CEO was to help Gingerbread think about where it best delivers impacts for single parents. And within that, we've had to go on a journey to think about our work supporting single parents into work. And really, I'm going to tell you a little bit about that process today, about that journey and our learning, and some of the conclusions we're beginning to draw about that and what that means for us in our future. I should say that we've been around for 100 years as an organisation, so we've evolved in that time. There are some people in this room that have been connected with Gingerbread for a good deal longer than I have, so I can talk very clearly about the last year, but for kind of context beyond that, please do come and chat to friends and colleagues. We would like to think that we're the leading charity kind of across England and Wales for single parents, and we provide a variety of services. So before we talk about what we do, I think it's really important for me to begin the context with kind of why single parents and work before I kind of dive into kind of what we deliver. So we published a report called 1 in 4 earlier this year. So 1 in 4 families in the UK are now headed by a single parent. So no longer are we a sort of minority community. We're actually increasingly a mainstream family, diverse family unit. And contrary to what the media would have you believe, 68% of single parents are in employment. But the problems or the restrictions that they face mean they're often stuck into low-paid and insecure employment rather than sustainable work that supports them and their families to flourish for the future and achieve the same that you would want for a two-parent family. What is particularly interesting about our 1 in 4 research is the 0 hours contract has seen that single parents particularly are using these more because it's perhaps more flexible, but that also opens them up to more risks within that. And the kind of idea about sustainable work and providing a future for their family becomes really important within that. And there is a significantly higher rate of, or reported higher rate of problems in mental well-being for single parents rather than two-parent families. And what's more worrying than this is that children of single-parent families are sort of more likely to grow up in poverty. And so there's an impact not just on the kind of the head of the family for single parents, but the long-term kind of aspirations for their children. So as you can see, work and employment for single parents is an issue that they need some support with. We had a new strategy last year, and really we were beginning to look across the organisation to think about how we kind of link our work via impact areas. And so our vision is making sure that we're kind of supporting a diverse family structure and they're not stigmatised. And our mission is to make sure that single-parent families live happy, fulfilling and secure lives. And we're going to do this in a various of ways, which are sort of 4 strategy areas. So we want to provide single parent stability at points of transition, particularly as they transition to becoming a single parent. That's a really vulnerable time for many parents. We want to not only support them to kind of achieve their basic needs, but we want to make sure that for them and their families that they can flourish, that they can access leisure, that they can access childcare, that they can get a job that they're supported in, and they can really achieve their dreams. And also that they're valued kind of by society and they're not stigmatised. So the stigma and loneliness that single parents face recurringly comes up to us as a barrier for them. And finally, we really need to make sure as an organisation we're financially fit for the future. I'm sure this is not an uncommon trend within the sector, but there are real challenges for us at the moment to secure our income for the next 5 years and to make sure we can stay and support single parents in the longer term. And so we've been on quite a journey thinking about, well, what does all this look like? How do we bring together the areas of our work into outcomes? And it's a work in progress, and I'm taking it to the board next week, so you guys have a sneak preview of what we're saying. But basically, we think we need to be focusing on financial well-being for single parents and how we equip them. We think it's about relational well-being, about how they connect and feel supported in their communities. It's about their emotional well-being and supporting them to feel able to tackle their challenges. And it's about supporting the structural and systems change that will allow them to reduce the kind of stigma that they face in the future. And of course, we would also like the dream ticket of being financially sustainable to achieve that. So what do we do currently is not necessarily what we've got on our strategy slides. So what we do currently to support single parents into work is we have 3 regional delivery teams. So we have a head office in London, up in Kentish Town, but we have 3 teams of practitioners who are largely delivering employment contracts in the Northwest, Wales, and London in the South and West. We deliver a range of contracts, including building better opportunities for DWP. We also subcontract for other partners working with young parents. So we subcontract for Bernardo's, for example. We also have a corporate partnership with Marks and Spencer's, where we support 700 parents to access a work placement in their store. And we reach around sort of 2,000 parents in total through the kind of range of our employment programs. As a parent, you don't just have to come onto an employment program with us. You can also ring our helpline, which is free to access. And over 50% of the calls we're getting at the moment are around benefits claim and tax credits and income maximisation. So often relating to kind of their work status and what they're doing as they either move out or into work. And with universal credit kind of being rolled out, the complexities that come with that. And our policy work is really trying to kind of highlight the precariousness of kind of the situation single parents are facing. But as you can see from the 2 slides, the volume of single parents out there versus the volume of people we're supporting on our employment contracts is not necessary. We're not necessarily making a significant indent on some of the kind of challenges we're facing around employment through our employment contracts. The challenges that we face here, universal credit is a huge issue for us, as I'm sure for many of you in the room who are working with more disadvantaged groups. So although it's only being kind of piloted and rolled out phase by phase, 1 in 4 claimant households are single parents. So single parents are significantly impacted by this financially. And this is creating a whole kind of, particularly around kind of managing debt and getting into kind of arrears for housing payments. We are really seeing this struggle, and this is making it very challenging to work with single parents to talk to them about kind of coming to do a work programme with us. They've got other more pressing needs. Rightly or wrongly, the sort of partnerships we have at the moment that support single parent into work are actually supporting people into short-term, low-paid and often insecure work. And the problem for that, for us, is that that may well trigger somebody transitioning to universal credit sooner than they would do earlier. So actually, through working with us, we might have supported them to build their skills and their confidence and get work experience. But if that job doesn't continue forever, we've actually potentially made them worse off by pushing them through a kind of universal credit claim. And that's a real moral dilemma for us as an organisation. We are finding that many parents are a considerable distance away from the workplace, and they need a lot of support to get there. And working on a sort of particularly kind of specified sort of length of programme can be really challenging because they don't necessarily fit that model. We really need to make sure they have the right support to kind of build confidence, access support, particularly around childcare, understand their future employment options, what that could be for them, and to think about their basic employment skills, how to write a CV, how to turn up for interviews, what that might look like. And the problem for us is that it's not us alone that looks at kind of how they get a job, unless we can find them a flexible childcare provider locally and an employer that's able to understand that if their child is sick or ill in school or in childcare and they need to go home because there's no one else to pick them up. We're often finding that single parents, whilst we might get them into work, can't sustain their work because the employers aren't set up to support them. And sadly, on our work programmes, we have, at best, a 30% into work rate for our employment programmes, which, if you're paid by kind of results, is obviously a challenge for us as well. So we kind of went back to we sort of done a lot of thinking, like we've looked at the evidence about our evaluation, but we've also talked to parents. We've done a really depth piece of research, which Renati have also been involved in facilitating, We've done a really detailed study of parents who do and don't access our services. We've done an evidence review for the last 3 years worth of all the evidence that Gingerbread has, internally and externally, and we've also done some external reviewing. And what single parents tell us they value from Gingerbread is the work that we do to recognise and support the challenges they face and to provide and to make sure kind of we're fighting their corner. We're the sort of one organisation that can sort of shout out for single parents. We know through the range of work we provide, we do develop parents' networks and confidence. So some of that is through our employment programmes, but some of that is through our peer support groups, some of that is through our forum, some of that is through our website. And we know that our helpline and supported by our online advice is really valuable to provide specific information kind of that meets single parents' needs without kind of them getting referred around various agencies. So often they'll kind of call us with the first issue, which might be, I need to do a kind of back to work calculation, but they might then go on to talk about childcare arrangements and family law, or they might go on to talk about housing. And so through our helpline, we're able to kind of triage their needs, that they might not know those needs exist until they kind of come to us. What do parents want from Gingerbread? We were really surprised that parents really felt like they needed more emotional support to focus on the challenges they face. Now, of course, that could look at one option as providing a counselling service, but actually many parents said, what I value from Gingerbread is being connected with other parents, but your provision to connect to other single parents is really weak and patchy, and it doesn't meet for everyone. And so I can get that emotional support from people like me if you create opportunities to connect with us. They value our campaigning advocacy work because I think they recognise that in terms of creating kind of real longer-term solutions, somebody has to be doing this on behalf of them. And they like our 85 support groups across the country, but they exist to do different things depending on who runs it, and they sometimes do run and they sometimes don't run, and they're not very accessible, and they're definitely not kind of uniform in what they do or what we know about them. They really want our kind of advice and information, and they value the fact that when they interact with Gingerbread, somebody can help think about kind of getting them on the right track. What do I need to do right now to address the fact that, you know, my house is on the market, my partner's left me, I haven't got a job, and my kids need to go into childcare? They value that. Perhaps what's important about that is nowhere on those 2 slides they tell us they want help getting a job. Even though we know that it's really important to get them to a job. And this has been quite a sort of interesting thing for us to consider, is what is Gingerbread's role? Are we the best people to support single parents into work? Of course, clearly we do at the moment, but should we continue to do it in the future? So what have we learnt? In the last year, I've picked up several evaluations, and I will admit, some of them are great. We're working with Renee on one of them, but there are some real challenges in that learning. So we do a brilliant job with our direct delivery staff of building confidence, supporting on specific challenges, connecting them to peer networks because they train in other groups of single parents. Sadly, that's not what we're paid to deliver. We don't consistently create good work outcomes for those single parents we work with. So we're not strong at engaging employers, and we haven't necessarily got that pathway right. We definitely don't have the effective back office systems to do this well and at scale. And for many of you will know that those systems to process the claims and to kind of bring that money through is really, really challenging. And I don't necessarily think that we would necessarily have invested to the degree we needed to do as we took these contracts on to be able to do that effectively. And I think really honestly, if Gingerbread would like to play in the employment space, we need to work in partnership. We do really well at supporting people understand that they would like to get a job, they'd like support to move the job, but we're not necessarily getting them into jobs. So should it be us that deliver the whole journey, or do we deliver part of that journey? And we absolutely need to strengthen our outreach and engagement work. So we sort of assume that because we're Gingerbread, we've been around 100 years, that kind of single parents just kind of flock through the door and come to us and say, yes, come on my programme. And that's just not the case. And that partnership working would really help think about how we ball that up. So the challenge in the era of not having enough money to do everything is to think about what we do well and to really focus on delivering what only Gingerbread can deliver. And we've actually made a decision to kind of wind down our employment contract deliveries. And with that comes kind of closing our regional offices and teams. We will deliver out on our existing obligations, but we're no longer going to deliver in the way that we do it. We don't feel it's providing the right value for single parents. We believe we can support those contracts in other ways, but we don't necessarily need to be the prime contractor. We will focus on trying to understand what sustainable work looks like for single parents, trying to pilot models of that and working with employers to better think about what can we do together to help you think about how you can attract more single parents and sustain them in your work. We want to make sure we continue to work with policymakers and employers to kind of advocate on these issues. And we want to really make sure we're kind of piloting more in-work support programs. So not just getting people into work, but what does it take to sustain a job? What does it take for you to be promoted? What does it take you to kind of achieve your career aspirations? And we want to really collaborate to apply everything we know about the difficulties that single parents face getting into employment to work with other people who are doing that really, really well. We absolutely need to strengthen this idea of connected network of single parents, their families, the people who support them, and really kind of bring this kind of peer support opportunities to fruition. We do that well and we've invested in it, but that kind of increasing connection and that self-esteem and that confidence are precursors to moving through to employment. But we do that bit really well and no one else necessarily does. And we will absolutely continue to run our helpline and make sure we provide high quality information and advice specifically for single parents that links to their employment journeys but doesn't provide all the answers. So that's a very quick kind of gamble through sort of 12 months at Gingerbread. I will be around kind of later for questions. I'm sorry I can't talk to you about pretty charts and data. That's a challenge within the organisation. But we do want to make sure that I think we're talking to people about why we've made some of these decisions and the process we've been through as we kind of move through our sort of strategy as an organisation. Thank you.